Hey folks, this is Rhykker with another Diablo lore video. In today's episode, we're going to set some things up to pave the way for the story of Diablo 3, specifically focusing on Leah and how her and Deckard Cain came to become quite the odd pair. This is part 18 of a video series in which we explore the major players in the story of Diablo, from the Nephilim to Tyrael to Deckard Cain to Diablo himself. And we give a crash course on what exactly is going on story-wise in this game series. Feel free to check out our previous episodes if you haven't, and be sure to have subscription notifications turned on so you can catch when a new episode comes out. Before we move on, a quick word from this video's sponsor, Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, a turn-based tactical RPG developed by Owlcat Games, who also made the great Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous RPG. Rogue Trader takes place in the grim dark 40k universe. I think it's one of the coolest franchises out there. If like me you love how dark the Diablo universe can be, well, Diablo looks like a children's show next to 40k. There's no good guys here, just bad guys and worse guys. In Rogue Trader, you begin your adventures in the vast Koronos Expanse, a treacherous region of unexplored space at the edge of humanity's domain. You take on the role of a rogue trader, a powerful figure who has the Emperor's blessing to explore, trade, and conquer, all while commanding a massive void ship with countless servants and personnel to do your bidding. On your voyages throughout the stars, you'll make allies who will fight alongside you, power-armored space marines and sisters of battle, enigmatic Eldari rangers, and more. You'll fight the enemies of the Imperium, including chaos cults and alien Xeno scum. The decisions you make in-game will impact entire worlds. Will you show mercy or rule with an iron fist? Stay faithful to your god emperor, or commit heresy and turn traitor? What sets this game apart is its blend of high-impact turn-based battles and strategic realm building. You're not just fighting enemies, you're also building your own space empire. And with a co-op multiplayer mode, you can even be joined by a brother. Rogue Trader released on December 7th on PC and consoles, and whether you're already a fan of the 40k universe or just looking for a solid RPG in which your choices have real consequences, then for the Emperor, click the link below and check out Rogue Trader. We're coming close to the end here. In our last episode, we covered the events of Diablo Immortal, which explores what major world-ending events happened between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. But let's take a step back to a year before the World Stone was destroyed and get caught up with Leah. Y'all remember Leah, right? Daughter of the witch Adria and Prince Aiden, aka Mr. Possessed by Diablo himself. After Aiden had saved Tristram from demons in Diablo 1 and knocked up Adria had absconded from Tristram with Jillian the barmaid, just in time to avoid its complete destruction by more demons. Adria brought Jillian to the city of Chaldeum on the eastern continent, where she gave birth to Leah. She cast some defensive spells on the home, and then vanished from their lives entirely. Well, Jillian raised Leah as her own daughter. Leah thought Jillian was her biological mother, and Jillian refused to ever talk about Leah's father. Leah grew up never knowing the truth about her parents or where she even came from. She never even heard the name Tristram. Now, unfortunately, it turns out that witnessing a horrific invasion of hell can mess you up pretty bad. Jillian had severe PTSD from the horrors she endured in Tristram, and I suspect would hit the bottle pretty hard as a coping mechanism. Over the years, her nightmares became worse, and she became increasingly unstable. She'd try to hold it together for Leah, but it's not looking good, and Leah was starting to notice. Meanwhile, Leah had inherited certain powers from her witch mother. She would have prophetic dreams and nightmares, and sharing this with Jillian just traumatized the poor woman even more, so that's not great. So it was a year after Leah was born that Tyrael destroyed the World Stone, Baal was defeated, and the heroes from Diablo 2 that defeated the Primevals returned to their normal lives, saying, we've done enough for the world. Deckard Cain, however, understanding the consequences of the destruction of the World Stone, that Sanctuary was now open to invasion from hell or heaven, started seeking some way to protect the world. In the fallout of what happened in Kurast, culminating in Diablo 2's Act 3, the Emperor of Kehjistan, Haakon I, moved the capital of Kehjistan from Kurast to Chaldeum since Kurast was pretty horrifically destroyed thanks to Mephisto. This allowed Chaldeum to grow into the most powerful city in the world in the years that would follow. Meanwhile, thanks to the World Stone no longer existing, the magic that was dampening humanity's power was gone, and so latent Nephilim power began to slowly re-emerge among some humans. For instance, Valla was born around this time in a village in Westmarch, not far from Tristram, you know, the place that was attacked and destroyed by demons. So anyway, Valla's village was attacked and destroyed by demons. Only Valla survived. Well, technically, her little sister also survived the demon attack, but one night, little sister had a nightmare, woke up, ran off, and accidentally drowned in a river. It's just so sad. Like, who writes this? It's so needlessly tragic. A demon hunter named Dotson later found Valla and took her under his wing and started training her to become a demon hunter herself. Valla joined Dotson on many quests to slay demons, and during the time of Diablo Immortal, she was in the Shasar Sea, where the hero of Diablo Immortal, the Shard Seeker, got caught in one of her traps. And seeing as how the Shard Seeker was not in fact a demon, she let them go. Valla ran into the Shard Seeker on other demon hunting adventures, and it was during this time that Dotson gave Valla his scarf, naming her a full-fledged demon hunter. I guess all the demons she had killed up to that point just didn't qualify her as a hunter of demons yet. Now, shortly after Valla was born, Li-Ming was born in Shanzai, another individual who would have latent Nephilim power. Now, you may remember the Diablo II sorceress Isendra of the Zaeith clan. Once every 7 years, the Zaeith clan visit families with 7-year-old daughters to select new apprentices. Well, Isendra continued this tradition, and when Li-Ming was 7, Isendra brought the young girl to the Ishari Sanctum in Chaldeum, the headquarters of the mage clans, in order to tutor her in the ways of magic. Throughout her studies, Li-Ming kept trying to sneak peeks into the forbidden archives and study prohibited magic. Something that the mage clans, frowned upon, since the ones who forbidden it, verboten it. But since Li-Ming was a child, they blamed Isendra for this. As a rebellious youth, Li-Ming joined an underground movement of students who had grown dissatisfied with all these silly rules and regulations and safety warnings, and they started to call themselves wizards. Archmage Valthek, leader of the mage clans and wielder of the Diablo III staff Valthek's Rebuke, felt that Isendra was doing a bad job, allowing Li-Ming's reckless behavior to persist, and so he personally took over Li-Ming's training. Then one day, Isendra was assassinated by one of the Vijaktar, the D2 assassins, which Valthek had totally nothing to do with, and Li-Ming stumbled upon the body. Now, Valthek claimed she died due to her own magic backfiring. Clearly, everything needs to be a lesson about the dangers of magic. But the thing is, Li-Ming could tell the difference between scorch marks and stab wounds, and so she never trusted Valthek again after that. Meanwhile, Deckard Cain had set up shop in Westmarch, still seeking ways to save the world and also helping the Shard Seeker with various quests throughout this time. But after a couple years there, he left Westmarch and Diablo Immortal behind and set off with a paladin to the Borderlands, a desert area in Kyrgyzstan, seeking a Vizheri repository of lore. There, the two encountered a demon that possessed the paladin, and while Cain managed to banish it, it had uttered a cryptic taunt to the old Haradrim. It said, "So pathetic, your savior is so close, hidden among thousands in plain sight, not 3 days' journey from here, yet you know nothing, see nothing." So anyway, the paladin was dragged to hell once the demon was banished, and then Deckard Cain did what Deckard Cain does best. He read some books. He went through the texts in the repository, and among them he found a Haradric spell book, but not something ancient. Its pages were clearly newly bound. Now, Cain knew that there had been false Haradric texts that had been spread throughout the world, but as he read through this one, it seemed authentic, and he believed it may just be a reproduction of a genuine text. Cain was intrigued to try to track down who may have transcribed these Haradric texts, and it's at that point that the demon's words came back to him. "Your savior is so close, hidden among thousands in plain sight." Now, the closest place with a population of thousands was the city of Chaldeum, and it was also a likely place for a book of this quality to have been made or sold. And as Cain thought of Chaldeum, he remembered he had promised to visit Jillian years ago. Oh yeah. Whoops. better late than never? So Cain travels to Chaldeum and arrives at Jillian's home. Jillian is, not doing well. By this point, she's on her way to fully losing her mind. She lost her job, money's running out, and while Cain didn't know this, Leah would find her mom talking to nobody about demons and undead. Jillian introduced Deckard Cain to Leah as someone that she'd grown up with in the town that she came from and called him Uncle Deckard. While in Chaldeum, Deckard found a bookseller and showed him the Heraldric tome he found, basically asking, hey, you know who published this? The bookseller guessed that the book was bound in Kurast, and he mentioned a group that was calling itself Haradrim that he'd heard of. Cain was even more intrigued, but he doubted that these Haradrim were real, knowing the true fate of the Haradrim. At best, it would be a bunch of posers, eh? He tried asking around, but couldn't find anyone claiming to be Haradrim. So he returned to Jillian's, where privately, Jillian confessed to Deckard Cain that she had come to fear Leah, knowing who her father was and what he had become. And that night, Jillian approached Leah while Leah was sleeping, knife in hand, in a moment of weakness, not unlike Luke Skywalker approaching his nephew Kylo Ren. But before Jillian can do anything, energy burst out of the sleeping Leah, sending Jillian flying. However, unlike Luke, this did not snap Jillian out of it. Instead, she doubled down and charged at Leah with the knife. This time, Leah woke up, saw this, and screamed. And now Leah's magic tore the knife out of Jillian's hand. Jillian started to screech at Leah, saying, "Child of the witch, your black ways will not save you much longer. The dead are coming for you." And Deckard Cain is just seeing all this, by the way. He's just there, watching, and at that point, he's like, okay, alright, that's enough, you two. Break it up. And he pulls out some magic necromancer knockout powder and blows it in their faces, and they fall unconscious. Then he apparently huffs some of that powder himself because as he was contemplating what strange magic was protecting Leah, he fell asleep. Waking up later only because the entire friggin' house was on fire. He called out for Jillian. No answer. Cain did manage to find Leah, though, who begged Cain to help her save her mom, and Cain was all, she's probably dead already. Then some random NPC busted in and pulled Cain and Leah out of the burning house, and they then noticed a commotion outside. Some guards were grabbing hold of Jillian, who they claimed had climbed out of a window from the burning house, and admitted to starting the fire. Then, not exactly helping her case, Jillian started to shout, all crazy like, "Burn in hell! Yes, I did it! To burn away the sin, to rid us of the evil here." And she went on raving about the end of the world, skies turning black, the earth vomiting up abominations, a whole lot of crazy nonsense that actually came to pass in Diablo 3. As the guards were dragging Jillian away to the loony bin, the last lucid thing that she said to Cain was to go to Kurast, where his brothers were waiting for him. So, on the advice of a crazy arsonist child killer, Cain set out... Sorry, that's not fair. On the advice of a crazy arsonist attempted child killer, Cain set out to Kurast, seeking the Haradrim. He took Leah with him because, well, what else are you gonna do with her? Now, on the journey, Cain, apparently trying to console Leah, told her that Jillian wasn't her biological mother, that her real mother was a woman named Adria, who had come to Chaldeum together with Jillian while escaping from Tristram, and that he'd read a recent report that Adria died in the Dreadlands. Cain, you really need to work on your bedside manner. Leah did not take this well, shockingly, but she also had nowhere else to go, and no one else to trust, so she begrudgingly stayed with the old coot. So they had some adventures together while on the road to Kurast, and in Kurast, with Leah's evil magic, totally not evil magic, protecting her again whenever they got into trouble. From Kurast, they followed a lead to Jiakul, a town hub in Diablo 4. Leah learned how to use a bow, she was captured by an evil cult to be sacrificed for the magical energy within her, usual uncle-niece bonding experiences. Now, for no particular reason, let's take a break from talking about Leah, and suddenly start talking about Belial. You remember Belial, don't you? Lord of Lies? One of the great evils? You see, he and Azmodan, Lord of Sin, were the only evils left in Hell for the longest time. They ruled over Hell, sort of rivals, sort of allies. Now, after the destruction of the World Stone, Belial had gotten to work on a master plan. He would corrupt an orphan with nascent Nephilim power named Gareth Rao. into becoming a dark mage that served hell. Gareth Rao built up a group of followers that Belial wanted to grow into an army to conquer Sanctuary, and then launched an invasion against Heaven as well. Because, I mean, why not at that point? You see, Gareth Rao was among a group of scholars who had found some old Horadric texts in Giacul, and what they read deeply intrigued them. The scholars made a pact to uphold the tenets of the Horadrim and seek out more information about them. They scoured the world for Horadric texts, even recovering the Horadric cube itself. Rao became their leader and called the group the First Ones. They were the group of new Horadrim that Deckard Cain was seeking. Over time, though, Rao grew obsessed with retrieving artifacts and claimed he was a descendant of the great Horadric mage Talrasha, an idea planted into his head by Belial. Talrasha, in fact, had no descendants. You see, while everyone else was partying and getting laid, he was studying the tome. Slowly, Rao twisted and perverted the First Ones from an order intent on becoming the new Horadrim, a name that their group was already being called in various places of the world, to a group that believed the Horadrim were wrong, that Tyrael sucked, and that humans were worse than demons, and that a new order needed to rule over them. All of this was Belial's manipulation, of course. Belial convinced Rao that Deckard Cain, the living descendant of the treacherous Horadrim Jared Cain, carried demonic blood in his veins, and ordered him to abduct Leah as a means of getting revenge. So, the evil cult we mentioned earlier, that captured Leah and wanted to sacrifice her, yeah, that was Rao and his First Ones, who are going to use the magic power in her body to summon Belial into the world. The cult came close to sacrificing Leah, and they would have gotten away with it if not for that meddling Deckard Cain. His plan foiled, Belial started to manifest through Rao's body, but when Belial saw Leah, he was caught off guard, because he recognized Diablo's presence within her. This shocked Belial, and that allowed Rao to regain control of his own body. And in the brief moment of clarity he had, in which he realized he had been manipulated all this time by an evil demon, he promptly defenestrated himself to his death. Cain and Leah escaped to safety, and while Belial was pissed that his plan was ruined, there was some good news that eventually came to the sad Lord of Lies. A boy would soon be born that would become the Emperor of Chaldeum. Belial hatched a new plan. Use this boy to take over Keshistan. But back to Leah. Over the next decade, Cain and Leah would travel the world, seeking lore to help figure out the prophecy of the end of days, an incomplete warning in one of the old Horadric texts that Cain had inherited from Jared Cain. Deckard truly believed that completing the prophecy was the key to defeating the Lords of Hell. Now, Leah enjoyed the adventures, she enjoyed traveling the world, but she didn't really believe any of this apocalypse nonsense. The two eventually settled down in a little town called New Tristram. You see, after the destruction of Tristram, tons of adventurers kept coming to loot the remains, searching for treasure, and so merchants started to hang around nearby to hawk their wares to these adventurers. These collections of merchants eventually grew into a fledgling town near the ruins of what would become known as Old Tristram, as this town took on the name New Tristram. There, Cain spent his time going through old scrolls at the Old Tristram Cathedral, and Leah would help him out. And that's where we find these two at the start of Diablo 3's story. But what would it take to make Leah a believer in the prophecy? How would Valla and Li-Ming become involved in these events? And what diabolical plan, Belial-olical plan, was the Lord of Lies hatching? All these questions and more will be answered as we continue to explore this Diablo lore series. Stay tuned. Until then, be sure to get caught up on past episodes or rewatch them for the 15th time. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Rhykkers Raiders for more Diablo content.